trying to learn how they're moving and how they're clicking, then you kind of throw me and Caitlin back in there, and then it's like we're starting from square one again. And so that's the fun thing about this team, is that we roll with the punches. We're trying to get all that stuff out of it.
In a league full of players who quietly do their job and disappear, there's one name that refuses to be ignored: Sophie Cunningham. She didn't just arrive on the biggest stage in women's basketball, she exploded onto it on national television. She threw opponents to the floor. Overnight, millions were shouting her name, and then she opened her mouth. What she revealed about playing alongside Caitlin Clark, the most polarizing electric talent in the game, wasn't just bold, it shattered the carefully crafted story everyone thought they already knew. Sunday, the University of Iowa Hawkeyes phenom, becoming the all-time NCSA Division I basketball scoring leader. The superstar everyone loved, the hero everyone cheered for, suddenly had a side that nobody saw coming. But that, believe it or not, was only the beginning. Off the court, on with no cameras, no contracts, and no obligation, Sophie did something that made casual fans stop scrolling. Arnold made the media pay attention and made an entire league rethink what they thought they knew about teamwork, talent, and truth. None of it would have happened without one moment, one phone call, one trade, one day that changed everything. And it all starts here. Sophie Cunningham's turning point, January 31st, 2025. That is the day Sophie Cunningham's world turned completely upside down. She had spent 6 full seasons grinding with the Phoenix Mercury, 6 years of putting in the work every single day, earning her place, building her reputation brick by brick as one of the toughest guards in the entire league. One, the kind of player who could catch fire from 3-point range on any given night, and who absolutely unequivocally refused to back down from anyone regardless of their size, their reputation, or what the scoreboard said. If Phoenix was home, Phoenix was where she had figured out who she was as a professional. It was comfortable, it made sense. And then the call came, and comfort was no longer an option. She had been traded to the Indiana Fever. Now, if you follow women's basketball even loosely, you already understand that the Indiana Fever in 2025 was not just another franchise on the schedule. This was the team, the one everyone was watching, the one everyone had an opinion about. Storybook season shattered records even off the court, with ticket sales jumping almost 265% and jersey sales increasing more than 1,000%. What? This was the franchise that had drafted Caitlin Clark, the most scrutinized, most debated, most obsessively followed athlete in the entire history of women's professional basketball. More cameras followed this roster than any WNBA team had ever experienced. More headlines, more controversy, more pressure from every possible direction. He'd more eyeballs from people who had never watched women's basketball before and suddenly could not look away. Every single game felt like a national event, and every single player on that roster was living under a microscope that never turned off. And the trade itself was not some quiet deadline deal that flies under the radar. It was a massive 10-team mega deal, the kind of blockbuster transaction that sends shockwaves through an entire league in a single afternoon. Cunningham didn't get a soft landing in Indianapolis. She didn't get a quiet introduction or a few weeks to ease into things. She got dropped directly into the center of the storm, and what happened next told the entire world exactly who she really is. Here's what almost nobody talks about when they bring up Sophie Cunningham's time in Indiana, and it matters because it makes everything that came after hit 10 times harder. Her start with the Fever was rough, not a little bumpy, not slightly off, genuinely painfully rough. She tweaked her ankle during the preseason before she ever played a real game for her new team, and had to push her debut all the way back to May 22nd. She sat there watching her new teammates build chemistry without her, watching the games pile up, unable to contribute. And then finally she stepped on the court. 1 week, that is all she got. 1 week of playing before another ankle injury knocked her right back out for 2 more weeks. Scary moment as commercial Sophie Cunningham hit the floor hard, and she is being helped off the floor. Think about what that does to a person mentally. New city where you don't know anyone. New coaching staff with different expectations. A new system with plays you are still memorizing. He had new teammates who have been building connections and rhythms without you for months. And your own body is actively working against you at every turn. Those first few weeks after she returned, she struggled. The timing with her teammates wasn't there. The shots weren't falling. The rhythm that made her so dangerous in Phoenix hadn't translated yet. On, there were real, legitimate, uncomfortable questions floating around about whether this trade had been a mistake, whether Cunningham could actually fit into what Indiana was trying to build, whether the Fever had given up assets for a player who wouldn't move the needle. But Sophie Cunningham has never been the kind of person who lets a rough chapter define the entire book. She never has been, and she made that abundantly clear because just before the All-Star break, something inside her clicked into place. The coaching staff inserted her into the starting lineup almost like a last roll of the dice, and the moment they did, everything changed. Not gradually, not over time, immediately. The enforcer emerges. In 13 games as a starter, Sophie Cunningham averaged 11.22 points per game and shot over 51% from the field. Let that number sit for a second. 51%. She was arguably the most efficient player on Indiana's entire roster during that stretch, outperforming expectations by a mile, and she wasn't doing it by being passive or blending in. She was doing it with an edge, a physical, unapologetic intensity that the Fever had been desperately missing. She wasn't just scoring buckets, she was setting the tone for the entire team every time she stepped between those lines. Austin knocks it away. Cunningham hits the deck. Fever forced 11 first-half turnovers. Cross court, here is Cunningham. She was making opposing players think twice before driving into the lane. She was letting every single opponent know through her body language and her play that if you came for her teammates, you were going to deal with her first. On, the Fever hadn't just found a rotation player. They had found their enforcer, and she was only getting started. Now, we need to talk about June 17th, 2025, because nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, that happened in the entire WNBA season generated more raw, unfiltered, explosive reaction than what went down on that night. The Fever were hosting the Connecticut Sun at home, and the game had been physical from the very first possession. Bodies were colliding on every drive. Words were being exchanged after every whistle. Once you could feel the tension rising through the screen with every single minute that ticked by. Then in the third quarter, Connecticut guard Di Carrington went at Caitlin Clark and poked her directly in the eye. It was aggressive. It was intentional enough to raise serious eyebrows. And it was the kind of play that in most circumstances gets a foul call, maybe a brief replay on the broadcast, maybe a mention in the post-game notes, and then everyone moves on with their night. But Sophie Cunningham was not moving on. She watched it happen. She took a mental note. She held that energy inside her for an entire quarter, waiting, simmering, carrying it with her through every single play, and then she let it loose. In the fourth quarter, she grabbed Carrington and pulled her straight down to the hardwood, clean and deliberate, one in front of every person in that arena and every person watching from their couch at home. The referees ejected her immediately, zero hesitation, and the internet responded with zero hesitation of its own. Social media absolutely detonated. The clip didn't just go viral. It became the single most shared moment in WNBA history for that entire week. Her Instagram gained hundreds of thousands of followers in a matter of hours. Her TikTok jumped from 300,000 followers to over 1.2 million practically overnight. People who had never watched a single second of women's basketball, people who couldn't name 3 WNBA teams if their life depended on it, suddenly knew exactly who Sophie Cunningham was. When she finally addressed the incident in front of the press, she didn't overthink it. She didn't apologize. You know, I think what happened to us this season, you don't see in the span of someone's whole career, yet alone one season. And so, for us, I think we're all pretty exhausted, to be honest. She didn't try to reframe it or spin it into something softer. She kept it as simple and direct as a person can possibly be. She said she protects her teammates, and that is what she does. She confirmed the league fined her roughly $900, which is almost comically low for a moment that generated that much global attention. And she made it absolutely crystal clear that she had zero regrets. Not one, not even a flicker of doubt. That moment was bigger than a viral clip. It was bigger than a highlight reel play. It was the moment that permanently redefined Sophie Cunningham's public identity for millions of people who were meeting her for the very first time. And what came next made the fight look like nothing more than a warm-up act. Cunningham speaks out. Sophie Cunningham did not go viral and then fade back into the background the way most athletes do. She did the exact opposite. She leaned all the way in. She launched a podcast called Show Me Something alongside her childhood friend and reality TV personality Wes Wilson, and she used that platform to say things that nobody else in the league had the courage to say publicly. In one of the earliest episodes, she admitted something that had been swirling in whispers and rumors and anonymous quotes for months. She said that when she was still with the Phoenix Mercury the year before, there were actual locker room conversations, real discussions among real players about how to handle Caitlin Clark during her rookie season. She confirmed what a lot of fans had suspected, but what no one with genuine insider knowledge had ever been willing to say on the record. Players around the league were deliberately targeting Clark, not just playing her physically, not just giving her the standard rookie welcome, targeting her specifically and purposefully to send a message to show her, in Cunningham's own words, what the W really is. She said she understood it to a point. That is part of professional sports. Rookies get tested, rookies get hit. That is the game at this level. But when it came to Clark specifically, she said it had crossed every reasonable line, way beyond anything that could be justified as competitive gamesmanship or the normal hazing that young players go through. And now that she was on Clark's team, Winnie watching it happen from the other side of the court night after night, she was genuinely stunned by what she was seeing. She said, "If she thinks it is too much, then it is probably too much." Those words hit differently because of exactly who was saying them. This was not a fan on Twitter guessing at locker room dynamics. This was not a commentator speculating during a halftime segment. This was a woman who had literally been sitting in those rooms when those conversations happened, who had heard those plans with her own ears, now standing up publicly and telling the truth about what she had witnessed. I think it's refreshing. I've been in Phoenix for the past 6 years, was drafted out there. I've had a really great time. I've been very blessed with being around a lot of GOATs in the game and learning. This was not a hot take designed to generate clicks. It was a confession from the inside, and the entire league felt the weight of it. She kept going. In another episode, she went directly at the people questioning Caitlin Clark's impact on the growth of the league. And she did not use careful diplomatic press conference approved language. She did not hedge her words or leave herself a safe exit if the backlash got too intense. She said as directly and bluntly as a human being can say anything, that if you don't think Caitlin Clark is the face of the WNBA, or if you think the league would be anywhere near where it is right now without her, then you are flat out wrong. She made it clear she was not trying to diminish any other player's contributions. She respected everyone in the league and said so explicitly, but the constant denial of what Clark had done for women's basketball, the refusal to acknowledge what was obviously true, made absolutely no sense to her. And she was tired of watching people dance around it to protect feelings or narratives. For a league that had been quietly wrestling with an incredibly complicated internal debate about Clark's role in reception, hearing a respected veteran insider say it with that level of raw bluntness carried enormous, undeniable weight. The clip went viral all over again, and this time people were not just entertained by the drama, they were genuinely listening to the substance of what she was saying, the side nobody expected. Then came the moment that completely shifted the tone of Sophie Cunningham's entire story. Away from the fights, away from the podcast sound bites, away from the controversy and the viral clips. In November 2025, with her contract expired and no roster spot guaranteed, Cunningham quietly showed up to volunteer at a charity dinner in Indianapolis. She wasn't on anyone's payroll. She had no team, no deal, and no obligation to be there. She just showed up, served food to local families, and when the cameras caught her words, she said simply that this is what they are here for. Not the highlights, not the brand, the people. Fever fans lost their minds. The clip spread just as fast as the Carrington fight had months earlier, and it wasn't the only time she gave back without being asked. Earlier that fall, she had jokingly launched a GoFundMe claiming to need help paying her WNBA fines, set a ridiculous goal of $10 million, and when fans actually started donating, she redirected every single dollar to Ronald McDonald House charities. Ambish, she even updated the page to make sure people knew she'd handle her own fines. Back in her hometown of Columbia, Missouri, she hosted the 4th annual Sophie Cunningham Classic in January. A 3-day high school basketball tournament showcasing top Midwest talent in front of college coaches, giving young women a platform she never had at their age. This was the other half of Sophie Cunningham that the highlight reels never showed. The farm girl who credits early mornings, manual labor, and deep faith for every ounce of who she has become. And then she started talking about Caitlin Clark off the court. It pays tribute to the WNBA star and Indiana Fever star, Caitlin Clark, right next to its Orchard Gummy Bear maze. And what she said caught almost everyone completely off guard. People had built up this towering image of Clark as someone untouchable, a perfectly composed celebrity who moves through the world with a publicist-approved answer for every question. Cunningham dismantled that entire image in about 30 seconds. On the February 25th episode of the Like a Farmer podcast with host Pat Spinoza, filmed at Tech of Scottsdale, she was asked for her favorite personal story about Clark. Her answer was so unguarded it felt like she was letting a secret slip. She said Clark is a normal human being who truly just loves basketball, and then she called her a big old dork. She said, "You go in not knowing what to expect from a generational player carrying that level of attention, and then you discover she's the biggest dork you'll ever meet." She said she loves her whole vibe. It wasn't the first time she'd said it either.